Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. In today's video I would like to initiate a certain topic that is often in the comment section on my channel, and I perhaps should have addressed a little bit earlier, but it's a really huge topic to dive into, but a very important one, namely the early 20th century recordings that we have and how they don't reflect, in fact, the 19th century tradition. In fact, I got a comment that kind of triggered me to at least make this video for you, to just share with you some ideas and some thoughts that you can take further on and reflect on yourself. I have blurred out the name because I don't want to go into a polemic discussion here, but let's read together and we will break it down. So the commentator says, we have the recordings of both the pupils of Liszt and Chopin playing these etudes. First 10 seconds of those recordings are enough to refute such marginal and expedient allegations, even close to passing the boundary of morality. I love that. And now, seriously, to start with the last remark, it is, in a way, true. I mean, if you really love the music of, let's stick to Chopin here, then there is a certain aspect of doing him honor in playing his music. And so, if you read that first time, you say, well, oh my God, there is not such thing as morality in music performances. But from this perspective, in fact, there is. Not saying that it should guide us or should prevent us from doing whatever we want, because at the end, we are only responsible with the music we play to the audiences that we serve. That's our only goal. And if you believe in a certain, if you find a balance, or if you find a certain way of playing that you really like, and there is an audience that really likes you playing that way, then there is nothing wrong in doing that. Of course, I also understand music is emotion, and we get emotionally attached very close to the music we love, and that's a strong bond. I mean, suddenly hearing someone that you probably have never heard before, in this case, this gentleman has never heard of me, certainly not before, and I take that etude in such a different tempo, even claiming that it's a real historical tempo. I should change those titles, by the way. They're a little bit, well, not even thought provocative. So Chopin in real historical tempo, I should change that. It's what I believe in. And on YouTube, I think that's perfectly fine. It's not an academic context here that we are making videos in. It's I present the things I believe in, and I think it's true. And I think it's true based on facts. But I understand that if you read that title, you click on that and you hear, oh my God, this is so much slower than my preferred recordings. And this is so much away from what I consider to be the highest level of pianistic capacity. So I can understand that you start writing this way. So that's really fine. The other thing is, a lot of people point to the early 20th century recordings that we have from famous pianists. And I've not addressed this topic because I do listen to those pianists, but that's a chapter on its own. It would be really interesting to have a list of all recordings available, and perhaps there is such a list, I don't know, with all the tempi that I take. But let me just say a few things. First of all, assuming that those recordings reflect an earlier 19th century tradition is something that's an assumption you cannot make, because we simply do not have any more, or we never had even, recordings by Chopin or Liszt. So how on earth can you say that what you hear in 1915 on a recording reflects Chopin's playing of 1840? Factually, the only thing you can say is that if you measure those recordings to the metronome numbers that we have, and yes, that's something we have to keep telling people, metronome numbers are very serious. They really are the tempo indications of that generation. It's not those metronome numbers are not a certain distance distant target, so to aim your tempo to, but knowing that it's so fast that you can never reach that. That's just something that's there in the sky for you. It's not true, those metronome numbers, and that's so easy to just prove, so to say, quote unquote prove, that those metronome numbers in fact were true representations of their tempi. So if you just compare those early 20th century recordings with those metronome numbers, you'll see those early 20th century recordings are off. They are fast, yes, in some regards, but they are in most cases not matching the tempo indications of the early 19th century. There's also another aspect. Those recordings factually do not represent our today's way of playing. So 1 century later, have you ever heard Paderewski play Chopin? It's technically inferior to what we do today. And even in those recordings, you see this ambiguity. I hope I pronounced that well. But anyway, so you have these two tracks where on the one hand, the virtuosic fast pieces are being pushed up really to the limits of what they could do at the time. They were perfect, fine pianists. I mean, incredibly gifted pianists, don't get me wrong. But technically, they're not on the same level generally as we do today. And we, I mean in general, on this planet today, not me. But on the other hand, you see, for instance, take again Paderewski's Opus 10 number 3 of Chopin. He plays that almost in double beat. So you have these two tracks there. Simply measure the tempi that they took, and you will see they do not represent a 19th century tradition, because either Chopin's tempi were wrong or Paderewski's or other pianists' tempi were wrong. They're not consistent. They're not in line with each other. So that's a very strong factual argument against saying that the early 19th century early 20th century recordings, that they really represent what their teachers of teachers of teachers, because that's of course a thing. There's a student of, and by definition he plays exactly like his teacher 3 generations or 2 generations ago. In the case of Liszt, we do have recordings of pupils of Liszt. We don't have that of direct students of Chopin, but that's actually a marginal remark. But think about this in a broader context for yourself. Just look to paintings that people were making in 1840, Delacroix for instance, and compare that to the style of Picasso, 1915. Or take the architecture. Take a building or the style that they had around 1840 and take it to 1915, and there is all those people, all those painters, all those architects, they were students of. And in 80 years, the world changed. So, and you see this in all aspects of life. And so why not with performance practice? There was not such a thing as keeping to tradition. You had still echoes of what could have been a kind of partial representation of earlier times, of course, because not everything changed suddenly. But they were very much embedded in something that we call progress. They proceeded, they developed their technique, they developed their styles, they developed their musical language, their architecture, their paintings, for what they thought the better. We are generations who are looking back, which is really strange. That's something humanity never did, in a way to reconstruct that. So in musical performances, we don't do that either. Neither in the classical performance, I mean the Steinway performances, or in the historical informed performance practice, we don't do that. Because these tempo indications are way too important not to include, and we don't include them. We simply don't. So at the end, just seeing this comparison between 1840 and 1915, there is such a major difference in style that it should surprise us that those people really were sticking to the tradition as only persons in the society. I give you a last example what tradition meant for those people. You had in Paris still the famous organ of César Franck, you know, the famous great composer organist. His works for organ are considered to be, I mean, it's mind-blowing, those works. I've played them a lot, by the way. He was organist of the Paris Saint Clotilde Church, where was a Cavaillé-Coll organ, and it was a very particular one, or an early instrument by Cavaillé-Coll. So it had certain arrangements of the wind chests in which it's récit, so its third manual was really up in the sky, very hidden actually. So it represented the kind of unique sound for the works of Franck. And Franck, his students, they adored him. Really, one of them, Charles Dounemire, was a great organist and successor of César Franck. And what did he do with the organ? He didn't keep the instrument in its integrity. He transformed the instrument. He electrified it, so he took out the original action. He took out the original console on which Franck played. It's still there. It's in Antwerp, I believe, now in the museum. But he reordered the wind chest, he changed the registers, so he really altered the sound qualities of the organ, the way the organ played, the organ was presented in the room, everything. So we lost the one and only, because there is not a copy of that organ, the one and only organ, the one and only sound source to play César Franck, thanks to one of his best students and one of his biggest admirers. That was the way people in the 19th century and early 20th century, still deep in the 20th century, I would say, thought about tradition. Dounemire was convinced that when Franck would return, he would approve the changes he made to his organ. And you know what? He might be right in that, because even people like César Franck, people in the 19th century that we stick into a certain box, they developed styles. And they were continuously doing things, making progress or going forward on the flow of the moment of society, of musical society or whatever. So if you have there these early 20th century recordings, they only represent their own taste. I thought it was good to address this for one time, and maybe we should go into detail more in the future. But as I said, it's a vast subject. Hope this was helpful and that this puts your mind in the kind of thinking mode, I would say, because pulling everything out of his box is really, really important. Creating the context of every period. It's not just one box that you can compare to another box 80 years before and you draw an equalization sign between those. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. It's way more complicated than that. So that was it for today, guys. Let me know in the comment section what you think about it, because it's always nice for me to read when you share your own thoughts from an open perspective. I learn a lot from you, actually. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. There's also a bell icon so you don't miss any of the videos that we upload, and also get a notification for the live streams. We're doing a lot of them these days. And I would say stay tuned for more videos. And then we see each other very soon again.